Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Reds Rundown podcast, hosted by two lifelong Reds fans and journalists. I'm Rob. He's Joe. And we appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Joe, outside of the Reds, how's life? You doing all right?
Outside of the Reds, it's good, enjoying some nice weather, excited for the summer months to come along, trying to enjoy the NBA playoffs, the NHL playoffs, and then also get the NBA draft coming up. So there's a lot of other things to drift my focus away from the Reds right now, which is welcomed at this point of the season.
Without a doubt. And that's, I think, going to just drive us straight into our question of the day. Do you believe this season is unsalvageable? Let us know what you guys think in the comment section below. Joe and I will have a little bit more in-depth thoughts on that later. This may be a shorter episode, guys, because there's just not a lot to analyze with the way this team is playing right now, other than I will give one really good shout out. Hunter Green is a stud. He is an absolute stud. Most of the starting pitching has continued to be studs. And I'm sad about the Lodolo injury, but I wanted to at least be positive about something. Our starting pitching is fantastic right now. Like, truly, our guys, it sucks that I literally watched Hunter Green give up a 2-run home run yesterday or whatever it was. And I sat there and went, well, they're going to lose now. They're just going to lose. Like, you can give up 1 run, maybe 2, but that's it. And then otherwise the team just seemingly can't score. So we'll dive into that a little bit more, but let us know if you think the season is unsalvageable. We're going to head straight into what happened in our last series. We played against the Diamondbacks and the Dodgers once again. It was a 6-5 loss for the Reds on Monday. Lexi Diaz giving up a tie game, blowing, not a save necessarily, but just, yeah, bad. Then the Reds win 6-2. Hunter Green was electric. The offense actually looked okay, and we were able to hold them under 2 runs. Then Fernando Cruz gives up a run late in the game yet again, and the Reds are unable to push across anymore and lose 2-1, making it a 1-2 series against the Diamondbacks, which is what we expected. Then against the Dodgers, the Reds started off hot, or not hot, but at least better than we had expected. It was a bullpen day. Brent Suter started that game. A little bit of a surprise, I think, for most of us. But the Reds had some timely hitting, including a Will Benson home run. The Reds win 7-2 on that Thursday game, taking out Tyler Glasnow, who had been honestly really good up into that game. You think things are going to start turning around. It's a Friday game. It's 3-3. And then the bullpen blows it yet again after they've generally been pretty good this season. And the Reds find a way to lose 3-7. They had stayed in it, again, really until the end. Starting pitching was excellent once more. Saturday, the Reds forgot how to hit once again. Graham Ashcraft was solid, but not good enough for a 4-0 loss. And we allowed Walker Buehler to seemingly find what he had been looking for all season. Then, yesterday's game, the Sunday game, Reds 2-2. Diaz holds it down in the 9th, but cannot do it in the 10th as Shohei Ohtani gets only his 3rd hit of the entire series. Wow. You lose 3 of 4 with Ohtani not hitting and Mookie Betts realistically not really hitting either. And you lose 3-2. Diaz giving up another run. He and his brother are on the schneid, to say the least. Joe, I will say this. This is about what we had expected. I am at a point where, in my personal opinion, the Reds realistically should have won the first 5 games of this weekend, or this last week. They were in both of them. They had a chance, right? Like, you got to find a way to win some of these 1-run games, which we'll talk about here shortly. But it felt like they were the better team than the Diamondbacks for most of that series, to be honest with you. But they just couldn't figure out a way to win, which is absolutely frustrating. I know that may sound really stupid, but they really did. They pitched really well. I think they hit better. They just didn't have timely hitting, and that was ultimately the end for them. The Dodgers series, they go out, they win the game 1. They're in it game 2. I'm sitting there like, oh my God, like, this team's playing well finally. Maybe they're going to find a way to win. Nope. Can't hit anymore, and also give up the big runs there. Saturday's loss was what it was. And then Sunday, you really think, hey, they're fighting. They're keeping it close. Diaz is in. He looked really, really good in those first three against those first three batters, and then just couldn't find it against Ohtani for a loss. I don't know what you want to dive into first here, Joe. We have our three topics to discuss, but I think they all kind of coincide with each other. And I do want to do a deeper dive into the one-run game separately, so let's hold that. But everything else is free game.
Yeah, let's just start with a quick, analysis of the series here. As you said, very surprised we won the bullpen game of everything that's going on with our starting pitching being that good. The teams, I think the Dodgers showed what it means to be a good franchise, and people get mad about them for spending money. But if I were in their situation, I would do the same thing. I'd spend all the money, because all this game is lessening your margin for error. And what we're seeing right now is the Dodgers, when they can have their best two players not have good series against a very terrible team, they were able to cover that up and win 3 out of 4. The Reds, on the other hand, do not have any margin for error. They have good starting pitching. Their bullpen ranks, I think, 19th. They're tied for 19th in bullpen ERA. Their hitting is bad. Their defense is bad. There's not much to if they make one wrong thing, they're going to lose the game. We've talked about it with starting pitchers, but even if Ellie has a bad game, it's hard to see a way this team wins right now. So I'll give props to the Dodgers for at least spending money. I want my team to spend money and to want to win. But it looks like we're going back towards, and I think we said it last week too, so I won't spend too much time on it, going back towards that. Let's just try to contend a little bit, but let's not try to actually win the whole thing. Let's not go all in. And, with the injuries and with the suspension of Marte, any margin for error for this season was taken out. And then you add in the tough schedule, and it's not been pretty, and it's been probably the most frustrated I have been with the Reds baseball team in my lifetime. So, all the way back to, I guess, the early years where I remember were the late 90s, I guess you should say, which is impressive that this is that bad of a team in terms of how frustrating it is. Very, very, I don't know, very other teams. I think it's just the expectations. We expected this team to compete, and they didn't. But there's been worse teams, but that's what really gets me is there was a chance for this team to take the next step to maybe make the playoffs. There was a chance for the front office to go put more into this team. They got two guys in Montas and Candelario, and both those guys haven't necessarily been the best, and are also budget signings in terms of they could have gone and got a star. They could have got JD Martinez. We talked about that even late. David Bell gets that extension, and we're still talking about that. There's a lot of bad decisions he's made. I know it's a tough gig right now, especially with the bullpen pitching pretty poorly and no one hitting. But this is definitely the most frustrated I've ever been as a Reds fan.
Yeah, I mean, it's just tough because I knew that a lot of players may take a step back, right? Because a lot of them are in their sophomore slump, if you want to call it that, right? But that's the big problem, is they're all doing it at the same time. And I think that that's the issue that you have sometimes with these young rosters, right? Where everybody comes up together, everybody's going to play together. The hope is that everybody's going to figure it out together, but they're also going to potentially struggle together. It makes me intrigued to see what they're going to do, especially not to be too forward thinking about this offseason though, because generally it's in year 3 where guys start to figure it out. Baseball's a hard game. It is. So trying to state anything differently, I think would be disingenuous to how hard the game is. And the thing is the team has actually been hitting better. It's now the bullpen's time to not be doing things right. That's what's really frustrating to me is it's like you said, the margin for error is not only low, but even when 2 out of 3 things are kind of working for them, with the starting pitching being excellent so far this year, if one of the other 2 is just not working, then the team is just not winning. And it's really unfortunate. It's just really sad. I think the expectations were, I think I had this team at 84 wins. They still can, to be fair. It's not completely out of the cards. I've looked forward at their schedule. There's a real world where they could find a 7-game winning streak in there, I think, pretty easily, even if teams like the Rockies can do it. I think this Reds team can. We knew this month was going to be brutal, Joe. You and I have been saying it since literally the first week of this show, since the first week that you and I looked at the schedule together. This was going to be tough. But what I've had to come to terms with personally, with especially these last 2 series, is if you can't beat the good teams, then it doesn't matter. They could still win 84 games. They absolutely can. Like, that is not out of the realm of possibility. There's 115 games left in this season. Okay. That would require them to go, what would it be? Like 65, I think, and 50, which the rest of their schedule is very much set up for that to be a possibility, to be completely honest with you. But that's tough. I mean, that's really, that's like elite levels of baseball. That's like near Dodger levels of baseball. Right now, I don't know if that's going to happen. I think even 60 more wins isn't out of the question, but you're still at that point. To give people reference, you're only at 79 wins. You're still below 500. Like, you have to win 65 if you even want a shot at going to the playoffs, even with, the Cubs and the Brewers playing well. The bullpen has been a problem. I want to at least discuss this, Joe. Where is Santillan? Where's Tony Santillan? And should Carson Spires just stay up? He's been great down in AAA. He's looked fine here in the majors. If guys aren't getting it done, when do you give up on those guys and move them down or just designate them for assignment? There has to be a time where you decide that that's going to happen, where you give up on guys. I love Fernando Cruz as much as anybody else, but they're over leveraging him. They're overusing him. It cannot be every single time we're going to go to Cruz or every single time we're going to go to Pagan. Pagan's been better statistically than I would think. I think it's just, he's just still frustrates me. But like the ERAs are starting to balloon for this team. Truly, the only couple guys that are really kind of holding it down, to be honest with you, are Sam Moll, Brent Suter, and Buck Farmer. Those are the only guys in the bullpen right now that are holding it down. Justin Wilson just went down with an injury. Like, it's just been a cluster, dude. And the bullpen, I feel bad for them because I felt like for the most part this season they've been pretty solid, but the clutch gene just isn't there for them. I don't know if you have any extra thoughts on the bullpen right now, but if Diaz can't lock it down, I feel like this team, it doesn't matter what the rest of the bullpen does because this team is screwed. Like they're absolutely in trouble.
Yeah, I think the bullpen has been bad. I think honestly for a lot of the season. So I'll disagree with you on that a little bit. We saw that the Dodgers even said like, hey, we tried to get Graham Ashcraft's pitch count up so we can get to the bullpen because that's where they're weak. Pretty glaring if some other teams say that. I mean, it's always the goal is to get to the bullpen and wear them out. But just saying that's when we knew we could do it. And the Dodgers had like 27 foul balls that game against Graham Ashcraft or something where they were able to get to the bullpen. So. And there's different things here, too. Like, Lucas Sims has been hot and cold his whole career. He has good stuff, but there's been times where I feel like, hey, he can be a real asset to a team that can win a championship. He can be a setup guy. And there's times where it's like, this guy, I don't know what he's doing. And Diaz, too. I think Diaz has had a good run at the start of last year. End of last year, he struggled. He struggled at the start of this year. And even when he's on, he's had some massive control issus where, like, he'll get a save, but he'll walk a guy and make it way too close. Where we've seen close in the past. Right. Probably worse in that regard too. But like, Aroldis Chapman had his control issues, but it feels like it's worse with Diaz. And that's what's kind of frustrating again with the whole Reds right now. But also, like the bullpen's not playing well. You ask a good question. When do you give up on some of these guys? When do you move roles around? Like when do you change up how you're using guys? Is the front office actually going to have the best bullpen pitchers up in the major leagues? Or are they going to leave Santillan down? Is Spires going to come up and be able to eat innings for us? Is he going to have a different role now that no one else is getting anyone out? There's so many questions with this that I don't know what the right answer is, but I do know with how much these guys are getting paid, and I know not all of them have options, there might be some good players who end up getting, I think, either traded in the next several weeks, get cut. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see because they're vastly underperforming, and we can't expect them to be perfect, but we can't expect more than 2 to 3 guys to have below, 4 ERAs. I think Pagan is 4th in ERA in the bullpen right now, 4.19 maybe for guys who've actually played a long time. That's not good enough. That's your 4th bullpen pitcher. And again, he's not going anywhere because he's actually been solid, and that's what's frustrating is like we should be frustrated. This is like a good bullpen. You'd be frustrated with him, right? Like, I don't know if you remember, Rob, we used to have Jose Arredondo, and fans were mad at him. He had a 3.33 ERA, like in the middle of the season. People are going nuts because he gave up he blew one lead, and I'm like, how many I would kill for a guy like him in the bullpen right now. Just like I said last week, I would kill for a guy who hits 250 on this roster right now. So, just that's what I think is tough. Is like the usage has been bad. The right players aren't in the major league level, and also there's guys struggling, and I don't see much of a changing of role or much work being done with them, which is just weird because if Derek Johnson does such a good job with the starters, it just you would think that maybe some of this bullpen stuff would get through to them, or maybe there would be some sort of like positive thing to say about them. But I don't have too much positive to say about the bullpen right now either.
I will say I think ERAs are a little inflated. I mean, not a lot, but a little. When you look at their WHIP and their averages, like Fernando Cruz still has a 183 batting average against, right? His problem has been walks lately. Fix that, he's probably fine. Lucas Sims still with a 2.12 ERA as well, or average, a 2.12 batting average against, not bad, but his problem walks, 9 walks in 14 innings, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like what Buck Farmer has been elite technically. He's got a .96 WHIP and a 190 batting average against. Like, their batting average against are great, but their problem is that they're walking guys. It's like, throw a few more strikes and you're not going to have this problem. Like, their stuff is great. That's the problem, is their stuff is great, but they're not throwing strikes, and it's getting them into constant problems. I will say one of the things as a former pitching coach, former pitcher, whatever, the number one thing that I've seen with this team that has driven me nuts the most probably is first pitch strikes. It feels like we are constantly behind. Guys have to battle, get back into it. You're giving the batter an advantage when you don't throw strike one. Now, you're not always going to throw it down the middle. Sometimes you got to kind of try to nibble on the edges. I do understand that. But especially against these like back end of the lineup guys, you got to throw strikes. And the amount of times that I feel like we're walking or we're getting into bad counts against your 6, 7, 8s, and 9 hitters. I know 6 is generally still a pretty good hitter, but you get my point. Against those bottom 3, bottom 4 hitters, you got to throw strike one as often as possible, like 90% of the time. I'm probably exaggerating the amount. I don't have the amount, but that's just the way it feels with the bullpen. And it's hard to watch. And even with some of the starting pitching, it's tough to watch. Like, as much as I want to praise Hunter Green because he has been amazing, when he doesn't get strike one, he battles. Like, he has to battle so much harder than if he was to just throw strike one, right? And it's not just a simple fix. There are a lot of intricacies and different, I don't know, ways that you can do that, right? But it does come down to something that simple. And I even heard the Cowboy talking about it yesterday. He's like, look, when you're falling behind batters, you're automatically giving them the advantage. It allows them to better predict what pitch you may throw in certain situations. And oftentimes that's a fastball, and oftentimes they're grooving it, and oftentimes they're hitting it.
Yeah, I think it's odd to me because I do think the starters' issues and the relievers' issues is totally different. And I don't mind that in a sense. Like, if you're a starter, you should be walking less batters. You have to focus on getting those first pitch strikes more.
Yep.
I mean, we're seeing guys that aren't even close to having one walk for even 2 innings pitched, maybe 3 with some of these starters that we have. We have relief pitchers who are like getting close to like 1 walk per inning. Like they're very close to, and and then like I'm trying to decipher, like, yes, we do have hits that are giving up that are a problem, but walks are just, they're free. I think we talked about it 3 or 4 weeks ago show when the starters were struggling a little bit. And it was like, hey, sometimes it's okay to walk a guy. With the relievers, it's like, hey, can you please just throw a strike? And I don't get, like, I'm okay with my bullpen being a little bit crazier with the stuff because you're throwing harder, you're trying to get more, revolutions on the spin and everything. But something's got to change to where there's a little bit of evening out on both sides where, hey, it's okay if Nick Lodolo has 6 games started and 9 walks. Maybe it's okay if you have 15 walks. Maybe get some more strikeouts, don't let people on base with hits and everything. Or, if they're relievers, maybe if you're, I don't know, Fernando Cruz has he has 12 walks in 19 innings. It's not terrible for a reliever, but, there's other guys like Alexis Diaz, 13 walks and 16.2 innings pitched. Like, that's what's weird to me. Like, I feel like the pitching staff needs to be more cohesive in a little bit, and I have the same sort of they have to be getting the same sort of scouting reports, same type of ways to attack hitters. That's why it's so confusing to me that even though we have Derek Johnson who's done really good stuff with starting pitchers throughout his career, I don't know where the disconnect is, and maybe it's a talent issue, but I think we both thought pretty well of this bullpen going into the season, at least to be solid, and now it's like it seems like it's a strategy thing, it seems like it's a control thing, and other than maybe Diaz because he's had those issues at the end of last year, I didn't think we were going to have this many issues with it.
Yeah, I mean that's what I'm saying is I think that and I think I said this maybe 2 episodes ago when I was really like digging on the coaching staff, right? I do wonder about scouting reports at this point, dude. I'm just gonna say it straight up. I am watching at bats where like the Reds for nearly 3 weeks were getting pitched backwards and couldn't figure out how to hit a freaking fastball in an 0-2 count. You are praying for an 0-2 fastball in an 0-2 count, right? Like you're like, oh, thank God they're not throwing me a slider, right? How do you not hit that? And it's not just that, but it's like, dude, consistently I'm watching at bats, fastball up and away, fastball up and away, and they're still swinging at it. It's not even close sometimes. Like some of these Will Benson strikeouts, especially recently to me, have been they pitch him low to start, up and a fastball, up or fastball up and away, and he's just getting blown by him. Like, dude, you have to figure that out. Otherwise, you don't deserve to be up here. And I love Will Benson. You know how much I do. But like, this is what I'm talking about, Joe. Like, these are the kinds of things we had. One of the best coaches I've ever been with is a guy who's coaching Hamilton baseball right now. And he's the head coach. And his philosophy was you just sit fastball and adjust. Sit fastball and adjust, right? Something simple like that. It helps take away some of the overthinking that is, I think, done, especially for high schoolers. Maybe the MLB needs this. I also heard the Cowboy this because I've been driving around a lot, as you know, especially recently. So I've been able to listen to the games a little bit more on the radio. And he's like, sometimes you just got to go in there with a more simple approach. Sometimes you just need to look for fastball mistakes, right? And simplify it to the point where that will help you. This is happening, I think, for all of their players. And I do want to say that I think we have gotten to a point where there's a possibility, because we don't know for sure, but that this team may be too analytical. There's a possibility because we know David Bell prefers analytics. That is his number one thing. But if you're telling me right now that that's, we watched, oh my God, I can't remember what at bat it was, but I was watching somebody yesterday and they swung at the first pitch slider, watched a fastball down the middle, and then swung at another slider on an 0-2 count. And the slider wasn't even close. It's not that it was like, oh, this might be in the zone. They just didn't know what the hell they were looking for. And at that point, it does come down to coaching as well as the player. Sure, I understand the player has to recognize that. But if you're hammering that home as a hitting coach, right? If you're sitting there, hey, we have to recognize when the fastball is here. You have to figure out where do you pick it up from his hand. Simple, basic things that this team is just not doing. It's everybody now. The only person who's hitting in the last week, there are 2 people who've been hitting the last week, Tyler Stevenson and Jamer Candelario. Spencer Steer is down to a 224 average. Ellie De La Cruz lost 30 points just in the last week. He's batting 256 right now. I mean, Stu Fairchild and Santiago Espinal are getting big hits for this team. That's bad. That's bad. That shouldn't be happening on a consistent basis.
So I do think there might be something to... It is on the hitters to decipher the information, but maybe they are getting too much information.
Yeah.
I think some of the greats will tell you, like, hey, this is what I see with this guy. So, like, do it. Like, this is what you do. This is your approach against a certain pitcher. And they can say it very nicely, succinctly, and eloquently. And then you probably get some of those scouting reports where they're pages and pages long. It might be too much information. So, as the great Tony Perez said, see the ball, hit the ball. It's not that hard. I mean, it is hard to hit a baseball, but the philosophy is not that hard. Yeah. It worked out for him pretty well. And that's something that needs to be taken into account. But we also have to talk about, again, just to keep it transparent, I do think there is a organizational failure right now from top, bottom, owner, front office. Whether we don't know how much they're able to spend and what budget they have, but still some front office failures here with some of the worst players being, or some of the best players being in AAA, not being on the team. Managerial, hitting coach, pitching coach, and players. At a certain point, we're starting Mike Ford in the 3 hole.
Yeah.
We kind of get what we deserve here. I mean, and some of these guys, like, again, Will Benson, the Guardians gave up on him because of stuff like this. And then last year we saw flashes, and it's like, oh, maybe he is better. Maybe he can improve. And now he's going back down to what the Guardians gave up on. So there's so many guys where it's like, I don't, like, the coaching does matter, but I don't know how they can look that bad just having played baseball their whole lives. And like it is tough to hit a baseball, don't get me wrong. But
But
these guys are good in
that's
their own
my
right.
point, Joe. That's my point is these guys have hit for
Well,
most of their career, and then you get up to the major leagues,
eh,
right? And now it is a hard game. But dude, if somebody's in your head too much, like think about all the times that people talk about that. I'm just saying, like, I'm not just blaming the coaches anymore. I will tell you that. But I will say that this year specifically, with a brand new hitting coach, a brand new philosophy there, this team is not doing great. And we see it all the time. All the freaking time where you get rid of a hitting coach and guess what? The team starts hitting again. Because that philosophy's out of their mindset. It just didn't work with this team. Right? I'm telling you, like, you blame David Bell for the whole, like, oh, we're not going to swing at, like, curveballs or whatever. I forget what it was that you were saying a couple weeks ago, right? Where he, like, was saying, oh, watching strike three. That was their mindset, right?
yes.
Okay. Dude, that's a hitting coach's mindset. He's never said that before, ever, as a head coach of the Reds. Ever. That is something that he's backing it up. No, he has not. Really?
He absolutely,
I used to watch every single
Bell
game at night. Really?
No, he's a Bell family. The whole Gus Bell, Buddy Bell.
All right, well then he needs to be gone then, because that can't be a real thing.
But Rob, I get what you're saying, and I'm cool with getting rid of the coaching staff. But again, a certain point, we're not going to go back into it. A certain point, you have to go up and hit the ball. You have to just if you're not hitting the ball well right now, you're Spencer Steer and you're at 220, and you have all this information. At some point, rip up the scouting report, go up to the plate, and go be the hitter that you actually are. Because you're way more talented than a 220 hitter. Ellie, way more talented than a 250 hitter. Some of these guys, you say, like, hey, they've hit their whole careers. A lot of these guys haven't. Like I said, Will Benson, like, Candelario is a 240 hitter career. Like, Jonathan India, like, hitting the last couple of years, he struggled. Like, there is something, like, where these guys may just be.
I'm saying up
like
until
this talented.
Recently. Up until
right,
recently.
But hitting at the major league level is different. And I do think that some of these guys haven't proven themselves for a long enough time at the major league level. And I think that's part of it. So, yeah, coaching is definitely bad. But, like, I think the blame has to go equally around to almost everyone in the organization at this point. Because it's not great. There's, like, you could sit here and say, well, David Bell's the biggest reason why they're losing games. Sure, I mean, I can agree with that. You could say the hitting coach. I mean, sure, we're not hitting the ball. That makes sense. You could say the players. I mean, the players are all underperforming what they should do. Is it the coaching staff? Yeah, get rid of the coaching staff first and then see if you have something there. But it's getting to the point where it's just not really. There's not much to take away that is positive right now. Like, the only thing I could say is Tyler Stevenson's hitting the crap out of the ball. 273 average. Who would have thought that would be? And he's sitting every third day, which makes no sense. So I don't know. I do think that if we can sit here and say that the ownership is bad, we can sit here and say front office is bad, we can sit here and say manager is bad. Coaches are bad. Players aren't playing well right now, and they did show some flashes last year. But for a lot of these guys, those flashes last year may have been like the only thing we've seen in their career, including Spencer Steer, Ellie De La Cruz, Will Benson, Matt McClain. Just one of those things.
Yeah, I think it may be time. Benson had one good season in the minors. I will say Cleveland didn't really give him a full chance. I mean, he only had 28 games for them, so I wouldn't call that a chance. I would say last year technically would have been his chance, and he had 275, right? So you can take that as you will, but I will say that there are guys that, like, and that's okay. Like, and during a rebuild like this, you want to find, like, if you can find 5 guys in this whole rebuild that are great and then continue to bring up more, like, that's the one thing I will say. There are guys on this team that you don't need to move on from. You need your Spencer Steer. You need Ellie De La Cruz. Tyler Stevenson might be one of the best catchers in baseball right now. He is throwing out guys like crazy. He is framing the ball really well. He's calling insanely good games, and he's hitting. I know that people are going to be like, that's an exaggeration. Like, Wilson Contreras is obviously the best catcher in baseball right now. There's no doubt about that. But I think Tyler Stevenson could be breaking into that top 10 this year very, very easily. He has been just really, really good. Sorry, I wanted to at least, again, trying to be some positivity, right? I'm not giving up on CES right now. Like, not at all. He has actually hit for his entire career up to this point, and he has less than 200 or 300 at-bats in his entire career. Not even a season's worth of at-bats. So I'm not giving up on a guy like him. Jake Fraley is a nice backup piece. Keep him. I like Stuart Fairchild as well when he's not having to play every day. The problem is he's having to play every day. As your 5th outfielder, he's pretty solid. When Friedel's healthy, he's good. And then you got your 5 starting pitchers as well. You still got Marte to come back. You still have Matt McClain to come back. It's just their depth is not what we thought it would be. and they need to replace that. And they need to go get an outfielder. Just go get an outfielder. That solves half these issues in my mind. If you can go get an outfielder that can hit, and TJ Friedel comes back in 2 weeks, and Noelvi Marte is back in 4 weeks, and Matt McLean's back in 12 weeks, you can make a run. You can win 65 games with the roster the way it should be. But we are starting to see, I will agree with you 100%. I think Will Benson just may not be it. I don't like seeing the Martinis and the Mike Fords batting on a regular basis. You need, like, Jake Fraley needs to be getting the at-bats that they are getting, right? Or even Benson. I mean, God, he's still better than both of them, right? But it's just, I mean, they still have pieces. The one thing I will say is I'm not as concerned about the future as I was. A lot of guys have started making some adjustments. I've really liked what I've seen. Candy has looked way better. He looks more confident. His at-bats have been a lot stronger. I feel pretty good about him. I think Steer is going to get out of this here pretty soon, honestly. His swings have looked better, and he has been really, really unlucky as well for the last 4 weeks. It's kind of insane how unlucky he has been considering how well he has still hit the ball, because he's not striking out an absurd amount. He still has half the strikeouts that Ellie De La Cruz has, which his strikeout rate, I believe, is down from last year as well. So there are things that are pointing towards the right direction. It's just that we're going through the worst part of our schedule right now as well. And I think that is going to lead into our last two topics here before we head into everything else. Are we too far out? We're 9 games under. There's still 70% of the season left to give people hope. Okay, 70%. That's a pretty significant amount. The Reds have also played the most games against the best teams in their division in baseball by a significant amount. They have maybe 4 to 5 really hard series left against teams like the Braves. They've got, I think, 1 or 2 more against the Brewers as well. If you want to count the Cubs, you got that. They got a series against the Royals. I think that's really about it. Otherwise, they still have 2 series against teams like the Rockies, the Marlins. They got another series against the Nationals, the Pirates, the Cardinals. I think I said them already. I'm not totally out yet. I will say that. I think that it may still be too much. But here's the other thing I wanted to point out in this discussion, Joe. 1-run games have been a killer. If we could even just have won 4 more games, we would be 23-24. We'd still have a pretty bad record. We would still be 5-7, which I guess is a terrible in 1-run games, but not great. Our expected win-loss right now is 23-24, and we only have a -7 run differential, which would put us in the National League. It would put us somewhere around 8th, 7th or 8th, so right outside of a playoff spot right now. There are a lot of things that have not gone the Reds' way. They've not only not played well necessarily, but they've also been incredibly unlucky. And the one thing we do know about baseball, Joe, is baseball almost always goes back to the averages, almost always goes back to the mean, right? Do you think that we're truly out? Do you think we can turn around our 1-game losses? And do you think, because we also have, by the way, we have the most games against above 500 teams in baseball. We have played the Phillies, who are unbelievable. The Mets have been playing much better baseball. Obviously, the Dodgers, the entire NL West, except for the Rockies, who are all good baseball teams. I know that the Arizona Diamondbacks are under 500, but that's because they're also playing really good baseball teams on a consistent basis because they're in the NL. We've also played the Orioles already this season. I'm not trying to be too overly hey, everything's going to be okay, but at the same time, we have really gone through a gauntlet. I want to give the team that kind of credit. This has been the hardest stretch of baseball I've ever seen a young team have to go through, potentially my entire life. So I'll digress and let you talk, but I wanted to set all that up and get your thoughts on it.
Just to wrap up the last conversation, Rob, just one of the things to talk about here. We burned so many years with guys who had potential, saying, "Oh, they'll figure it out. They'll figure it out. They'll figure." Drew Stubbs, Billy Hamilton.
Yep.
throw in a million other names for Reds fans who are familiar with.
Yep.
That's what I'm concerned about. I do think that this isn't totally over for them. So I'll just clear up what I'm saying. I am saying that you can start to think that this might be who they are. I would give everyone at least until the end of the season to prove themselves, especially with how things are going. That's like for most of these guys, it's at least a year and a half in the big leagues, almost 2 years, right? I'm not saying their career is over, like give up on them completely. I'm just saying it's something you have to start thinking about so we don't get into more of those situations where it's like Billy Hamilton, you're in 4 and 5, starting in center field and batting really poorly, and all that. Maybe they're just a role player, and maybe they're not an everyday starter. That's just something they start considering. So
I agree.
With that though, you're right, and you're right too. That like the changes to the front office and coaching staff will come before these players individually, probably. Unless we see a major rebuild. And I would love to see what these guys will do under a new manager, hitting coach, pitching coach, all that, if things don't get fixed. Like Derek Johnson, I don't know what's going on in the bullpen. But as far as your question for now, are they too far out now? As of right now, no. I think this has been a tough schedule. Run differential is very close, but they're also a streaky team where like they'll score 7 runs one game and 0 the next. So like that makes it weird, like for the run differential purposes. Mm-hmm. The thing that scares me is this week is tough too, and I do think at the end of this week it could be over. Because you lose 4 or 5 games this week, that's where it really gets tricky. Because we still have a lot of time to kill before Marte gets back. We have to see how Friedel's going to do. We have McLean coming back way late in the year. There just aren't enough. CES too. There just aren't enough reinforcements coming soon enough to help salvage this season. Now you're right. The good news is the schedule is easier, so maybe we can play 500 baseball. But like you said earlier, 500 baseball doesn't get us anywhere in terms of this right now where we're at. So the good news is that the schedule gets easier. The bad news is we still can't beat good teams, which is going to take beating good teams to get there. Our 2 series wins so far over teams above 500 are both over the Phillies. The Phillies have had the easiest schedule in baseball, I would argue. I think they've only maybe won 1 series over a team who has a winning record this year. So in a way that we have had the toughest schedule, Phillies have had one of the easiest schedules in the league right now. So they're very inflated with their record. So maybe the Reds are some of the toughest competition they've faced. I think right now, if they can have a good week, if they can go 500 this week, it is salvageable. If they lose 4 or 5 games, you're looking at 10 games under 500.
Sorry, 400. 4 games is basically 500, right? Are they playing 7 games or are they playing 6? I don't remember.
They're playing 6 this week, right?
Okay, you're right. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, they're playing 6. So if you lose 4 or 5 games, you go to 10 games under 500 before May's even over. You don't get these guys back necessarily even in this week. Maybe we'll see some of the guys come back, but like that's what makes it tough for me to say, hey, this season is salvageable. I'm not going to say, hey, give up. I'm not going to say, hey, start trading guys tomorrow. But it gets to a point where how many games can this team make up with guys, like I said, with the reinforcements not being here tomorrow, with Mike Ford batting third? I just don't see a team like that, built like that, being able to. You're right. They can go on a 7-game win streak. I don't know if they can go on a 7-game win streak, lose 2 games, bounce back, and win the next series. I don't know if that's going to happen. The starting pitching is encouraging. It's not currently over, but this week could end up being the nail in the coffin, and we could both be wearing black next week for the Reds' funeral, Rob.
Here's all I will say: is I can totally see this team going on a 9-1 spree. I could totally see this team winning 14 out of 18 games, right? And if they do that, they're right back in it. They're fine. And especially with the schedule that they have, they can do that. But it is going to be of utmost importance that you are winning those games, right? It's not going to be like you have to win every single series basically for like 2 months straight to make up for how bad this stretch has been. Now, I will give them credit here. They have been winning games at least enough to keep themselves in it, right? They are going through, this might be the worst baseball I've seen a Reds team play ever with the amount of talent that they have. I mean, ever. Okay. But again, dude, Rangers, Orioles, Diamondbacks, Padres, Dodgers, all of the Phillies, most of these teams are going to be in the playoffs. And yes, it's going to be tough winning these games now. And sure, you're going to be like, well, then they got to win. If they make it to the playoffs, they've got to go through these teams for like a month. I think things will be different by the end of the season. I will give them that. I'd rather them do this in May than do this in August, because then your season's actually done, right? So I will say that, and I promise you, they are not going to be the worst one-run baseball team of all time because that's the pace that they're on right now. They will find ways to win games. Guys will come up clutch. But you are right, dude. I mean, I love me some Jonathan India, but bro, he might just be a utility player. He might. He hasn't hit for the last 2 years. It seems like he's not really making, like he was making the change at the beginning of the season, getting a ton of walks. He's still not striking out a lot, which is what's crazy. And he's still walking a decent amount, but it's like he's just not getting much pop behind his bat. And I'm worried that maybe he's trying to take too much off his swing. Maybe he's overthinking it. I don't know. There are a lot of things that they have to fix right now with this team, and they have got to consistently hit. If this team consistently scores over 4 runs a game, I'm telling you, they are winning. They will win 65 games. If they can score over 4 runs a game, they will win 65 of their next 50 games. I am very confident in that because I think their starting pitching is good enough. And I think if we're really having a closer problem at the trade deadline and we're 4 games under and they feel like this team can make a run because McLean's coming back around that time, they will go out and get a closer. Hopefully the best one that's on the market. Hell, go get Iglesias from the freaking Braves. They have so many pitchers in their back end. They're going to have to trade one of them to get a hitter or something. We could trade him. I don't know. I'm throwing out a random name, but he's still been pretty decent. Just go get somebody, right? I don't care who it is. Figure it out. I still really believe, I'm telling you, dude, if they would have made a trade a week and a half ago for freaking Luis Roberts or somebody, I think that this would have been a very different week. I'm dead serious because nobody's afraid of Reds hitters right now. And they're pitching around Ellie and they're pitching around Steer, and it's not mattering. It's just the fact of the matter. I mean, Steer's leading the team in walks. He's only 8 strikeouts more than his walks. It's just wild to me.
It's bad. It's bad, and I would be doing the same thing if I were a different team. Hey, walk Ellie, pitch around him, get him to strike out because he's a free swinger still. And with Steer too, like it doesn't. Even if they're not, the average isn't going up. They may not be getting anything to hit, and they may be getting out because it is tough to have that plate discipline against these guys who are throwing faster than ever and have more. Yep. As we talked about earlier, revolutions on their pitches more than ever before in MLB history. So it is tough for those two guys to have almost no protection in this lineup around them. I mean, it's just crazy.
It's horrible.
Yeah. Here's the thing. This week is important to me. We're going to get to the previewing of the series here in a little bit, but the Padres and Dodgers are 2 very good teams. If they do lose those 4 or 5 games, like you said, it makes it like 2 months that you have to like win every series. Now they could do that. They could. Like June is a relatively easy month.
Yep.
It's like, hey, you have the Cubs who are playing better than expected this year. We'll see if they'll keep that up. But you have the Rockies, the 2 games against the Guardians. The Guardians 30 wins already. They're a very good team. But
that's only 2
winnable games are at home.
Yeah,
and 3 against the Brewers. There's 5 games in the middle of the schedule. If we're gonna sit here and say that maybe the Cubs aren't as good as the record says they are so far, which they're doing fine. Give them credit, but like also they may not be that good. There's 5 games in the middle of June that are tough. If you can get through June and win 20 of those games, I mean things do change, but just about how big of a hole do you dig? What point do you get these players back to help?
Do that. If they win 20 games, they're back at 500.
Right. assuming this week doesn't go as bad as I might think it might go.
No, they still are. They'd be like 3 games under. They'd be 3 games under because it's
exactly.
20 and 10. Yeah, which would be like. But that's the thing is like that's what we're saying is it's like it's not even close to being done in my mind because the rest of their schedule literally from starting on what day is that? Starting on Monday next week through literally the rest of the year. Their best teams that they're going to play are like the Braves, the Royals, the Brewers, and who else? And the Yankees. Yeah, and I guess the Guardians, but that's 2 games, so whatever. Like
the schedule makers are awful people, but
yeah,
because we already played we already
Mariners,
played the Orioles, and
Rangers,
the Yankees.
Orioles. We've already played them. Sorry, continue.
I have a sneaky suspicion that this might. Like the negative momentum going into this might hurt us a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I think that the Cubs might be a team where I don't know if I can pick us winning a series against the Cubs right now.
Not yet.
The Cubs are playing better than expected, but like I'll give them credit because they are playing better. So that makes it tough because we have 2 series against the Cubs in June. the schedule does get easier. How can we adapt? Will we change the bullpen usage? Will we get some guys back to help us out? That's where it's tough. Again, I might say it's over by the end of this week, depending on how this week goes. It doesn't mean that they're physically incapable of it. I just don't know if I believe that this team, with the current makeup of everyone there, can get it done. And that's where it comes to maybe something changes, Rob. Maybe they do fire the hitting coach. Maybe they do make a trade for an outfielder, and that could change my opinion. But as things currently sit, where we don't know when guys are coming back, we don't know, are we going to have the best relief pitchers up at the major league level? I don't know if I would be placing a bet for the Reds to make the playoffs this year after this week, especially.
I'm going to say two more things here. I'm going to point out a couple quick things, and then we can move on. Because Joe and I were trying not to. This is potentially a venting and copium session for us, but we're taking it. I'm going to cope a tiny bit. They're only 4.5 games out of the wild card, which is wild to me.
Yeah.
And their runs scored and runs allowed are almost the exact same as the Cubs, who are 26 and 22. They've scored more runs than both the Pirates, the Cardinals. They've scored the same amount of runs as the Braves. Okay. So that's a pretty wild stat here, to say the least. They have allowed less runs than everybody in the division except for the Brewers. Okay. And everybody in the NL West except for the Dodgers. I really, truly believe that this team, once they get through this schedule and get a couple guys back, can make a run. They have to survive this week. Survival to me is 2 wins. I'm not going to give you that's my prediction, but if they actually get 2 wins, they'll be 21 and 32, which is not great, obviously, Joe. It's 11 games under. But again, June has set up to be a 20 and 11 month. At that point, because then they're 2 weeks prior to the All-Star break are also very easy. Like, I think they have the Rockies in there in one. They may even have the Nationals. I can't remember. But the point being, if this team can finish June and be 4 games or 5 games under 500, then I think that we are singing a very different tune. And I don't think that is out of the realm of possibility. I just think I want to repeat the Red schedule, and then we're going to move on unless if there's something else you want to add. This has been the most brutal stretch of games that I can ever remember. Basically starting since the beginning of the year. Right? Nationals, whatever. We talked about that. Phillies have the best record in baseball. They're like 20 games over 500. Okay? We have beaten them twice, actually. The Mets have been a much better team. They're almost back to 500. The Brewers are leading our division significantly. White Sox, whatever. Mariners, we started their winning streak. They are literally one of the best teams in the AL right now. They're finally starting to hit, and their pitching is unbelievably good. Angels, whatever. Phillies, again, like we said, tied that series, is what it is. You have the Rangers, who are second, who are World Series champions. You have the Padres, the Orioles, who are leading their division, the Diamondbacks, the Giants, the Diamondbacks, the Dodgers, the Padres, the Dodgers. Then you finally get the freaking Cardinals. What I'm saying is I've never seen a more brutal schedule for any team in baseball, except for the NL West now, and that's just because they have to play in their division. For a team that's not having to play a division that is just unbelievable, I've never seen a more brutal schedule. Again, they don't even play a single team in their division in that stretch, other than the Brewers. That's it. That's the only team we play in our division, and we've been playing the best of the best in every other division. You got to beat them. I understand that. But for a young team in their second month of baseball, I'm starting to just totally cope and say that maybe they're going to figure this out if they can just find 2 wins this week.
It's, again, certainly possible. We'll see when guys come back and help. The one thing I'll say that's kind of, I put a bow on it from my end, I still think some of the teams you mentioned stink, like the Mets, 4 games under 500. Yeah,
they've been really, they went on a huge winning streak, dude. They are better than their record.
Okay, they can be better than the record, but they still aren't quite there. It's even if we, did beat them, it's not.
It's fair.
I don't think it really gives you much to be good about, like happy about. But I will say, there are, I think, because of the way baseball has gone with certain teams paying a lot of money and other teams getting ready to take that next step as young teams, there are a lot of teams with 30 wins already, and that is abnormal. So The Yankees have 33. The Orioles are close with 29. The Guardians have 30. The Phillies have 34. The
Dodgers.
Dodgers have 32. So what that means is if those first place teams or teams near the top of the division are going to have that, that means the wild cards will have worse records this year, which means that maybe it will be like, hey, you go 500 and get in. Now we have to see it play out. Like again, I don't think the Phillies are as good as the record says they are. They've had a weak schedule this year, but for right now, things can get better. It's one of those things where I might have to see it to believe things getting better just because of the way the lineup is currently constructed. But you're right. If this team's fully healthy and guys come back, and they can keep it together just this week and keep it to a winning percentage that is above 400, we'll put it, maybe things can turn around.
We will see. We will see, Joe. I appreciate you at least entertaining my hopes there. But we move on here to the Padres, who have been a very solid team. For some reason, they just can't find their way over 500. They're also playing good teams. They just played the Braves. They have a doubleheader today against them. That's going to be tough. Right now, the matchups, even though I realized I totally messed up the Dodgers matchups. I have no idea how. It almost feels like they completely did a Houdini and switched things up. I think the only one I got right was the Walker Buehler one. And we don't really know what the Dodgers are looking like for this next series, by the way, either. So we'll have to see because it looks like they may have some guys in and out, but I'll at least give our guys. We got Andrew Abbott versus Michael King. Likely going to be Nick Martinez because this will be the last start that Lodolo should miss with that calf strain or whatever strain it is versus Matt Waldron. Frankie Montas versus Yu Darvish. Closer Robert Suarez has been fantastic for them this year. Lineup with the new addition, Luis Ariz at second base leading off. I have him in here as a righty. He is a lefty. Mess that up real quick. Then you got Tatis, Cronenworth, Machado, Profar, Bogarts, Merrill, Campusano, and Kim with old Reds friend Donovan Solano, Tyler Wade, Jose Azocar, and Kyle Higashioka. Whatever. God, I can't believe I messed that one up. I'm normally pretty good on that one, but whatever. Look, Arias has been helpful. This team is also extremely inconsistent. They went 0-3 against this Rockies team that I think is, I know they also went on a streak, but I don't think they are a very good baseball team in general. I think they would probably have the worst. They probably should have the worst record in baseball, or pretty close. They have a negative 73 run differential, which is absurdly bad, to be honest with you. They are also going to be coming off a really tough 4-game set against the Braves, including a doubleheader today, which could absolutely really hurt their bullpen, to be honest with you. Joe, again, maybe I'm just really trying to find some hope, maybe just because this will be the last week of hope that I get to have. But I think we're catching the Padres at the perfect time. We're getting them at home. We have an off day. They have 2 games to play today. Then they've got to travel later in the day. It feels like we're in a pretty good spot. I want to get your thoughts before I dive too far into mine, but that's where I'm at before I do a little more in depth.
Yeah, you're right. They did a really good job battling back to 500. They're 24-24 now, doing a really good job since the last time we played them a couple weeks ago. They got Arias. They're 8-6 in that stretch. They did have that weird series against the Rockies, which sometimes against divisional opponents that stuff happens.
Yep.
They are a very bad team, but I have been more impressed with the Padres, probably more than a lot of teams in the league this year. And you're right. I think they're better than the record says they are. But also, they just basically said, hey, Juan Soto, get out of here. Let's just go get Jerks and Profar. And he's better than Juan Soto ever was for so far this year. It's not going to say he's going to hold up, but 335 batting average so far this year. Add that to a lineup with all the star power they have. Again, for me, we talk about it a lot. This is going to be. I'll put it on the bullpen. This is on our bullpen to get things done. I think our starters can hold this lineup in check, but limiting home runs when you come out of the bullpen is huge. I think that's going to be the key to this series. A lot of power bats, a lot of guys who are hitting the ball very well. I think we're getting them at a decent time, but they're also severely talented. So that's what makes this prediction tough. I'll put it that way.
Okay. So are you giving yours now, or do you want me to go through mine and then give yours?
I'll go 1 and 2. I think, again, with the bullpen the way it is, our starters can go 7 innings, and I'd still, we could be a tie ball game after 7 innings. I don't know how it's going to go. Our offense is very sporadic, and maybe we get one. The way things are going right now, we get one run of a lot, or one game of a lot of runs per series, maybe, and then the rest of them we get 1 or 2 runs max. So I will say until we figure out the consistency, I will say 1-2 against the Padres.
So I think we did a pretty good job against the Padres in the last series, holding people like Machado, Tatis from really doing a whole lot. I think I was a little disappointed when I was looking at our starting pitching because I feel like if we had Lodolo instead of Abbott in here, I think it was an easy 2-1, honestly. I know that sounds really dumb, but I like Abbott against Michael King, and I love Lodolo against Matt Waldron. Like, I really do. I think that those are two very, very, very winnable games. I'm a little less on that, but I am going to pick us to go 2-1, Joe. And here's the reason why. We're coming home. Seriously, coming home, having a day off. This team plays really well off of days off. They generally have better series. They generally are going to hit a little bit better. They just maybe needed this time to kind of reset. They just had a really tough West Coast trip, right? They're done with the West Coast, I believe, for the entire rest of the year. I think they have to go to Colorado, but I believe that's it for the entire rest of the year. They have been on the West Coast forever. They get to be home now for, let me see here, 10 straight days. Okay. This is an opportunity, I think, for them to start to turn it around. And while I like the Padres lineup a lot, I don't love their pitching a lot. And I'm hoping that the Braves are going to burn their starters quickly and get straight into the bullpen. Because if the Braves can get to the bullpen quite a bit today specifically, the Padres are going to have to sack somebody. They're going to have to bring somebody up from AAA for that sacked person. And it just feels like this is the opportunity for the Reds to strike and finally win a series. Their hitting has been better. I think Ellie plays much better at home. Like, we've seen that. He is not a road warrior right now. He is very much plays off the crowd's energy and everything like that. Like, I believe his home and road splits, let me bring them up really quickly. His home splits are... Oh, I have it. It's right here. Okay. Yeah, he's batting .315 this year at home and .211 on the road. So I believe that he is going to hit better. Spencer Steer will probably is going to find... I just feel like this is a series where every crappy thing that's been happening is going to figure itself out, and I have a hope that our bullpen is not... Because, like, the bullpen has been struggling because they've been so many one-run games. I'm hoping if maybe they're 3-run games, that maybe they'll give up 1 run, but that'll be it, and they'll be able to get through it, Joe. So that's truly where my hopium is at. I just think that there is a real world where that can happen. I do think the Padres are better than their record shows, but I do also think that we match up decently against them, especially in this series. And God bless, let's hope those freaking Braves go out there and just pummel them for today, because they're going to be pissed off that they got absolutely smoked on Sunday. We just got to hope at that point. But that's where I'm at. I'm going 2-1 with it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, well, filling in for time, that it was funny that Ellie 2-11 on the road, but after their win, the one win against the Dodgers last week, he said, he's good at playing in LA because of GTA 5 that he plays, which is kind of funny. But also disheartening to have that article come out on Cincinnati.com saying why the Reds won't be able to keep Ellie De La Cruz. And basically it boils down to Scott Boras as his agent, when Scott Boras also represents like Matt McClain and a couple other big Reds. So again, just really, really helping us have a great time on the Reds Rundown podcast here, is having all our players in the future stripped away from us on Cincinnati.com story already while we're going through this tough patch.
6 years until most of them are
right.
gone. So, and by then, maybe the Reds will have won a World Series and we'll have a ton of money because a new owner will have come in, and it won't freaking matter, and the big red machine will be back, baby. Oh, God. So much hopium. All right, we head into the Dodgers at home. Now, if you remember again last year, we swept the Dodgers at home in that series. I believe. I'm like 90% sure. That was Ellie's big coming out party. Really was a fun series. We either went 2-1 or 3-0. I can't remember exactly which one. You might be able to look that up while I'm talking about it. But for our side, we're going to have Graham Ashcraft versus Walker Buehler to start it off. At least that's the projected. Then you got Hunter Green and Andrew Abbott. It's his week for 2 games. I don't know who the Dodgers are going to be throwing out there. I believe we're going to be getting Yamamoto. either in games 2 or 3. They sent out God, I can't even remember his name yesterday. Was it Krantz? What was this guy's name, Joe? Where's he at? I can't.
I don't know what you're
remember.
talking about because I'm looking up
Okay,
the
sorry,
Reds
Knack.
Dodgers
The
last year.
Knack. They sent out Landon Knack against us yesterday. So it may be Landon Knack versus Hunter Green again, and then Andrew Abbott versus Yamamoto. I believe that that's going to be the case. I can't say for certain because the Dodgers kind of moved things around even this weekend that I wasn't expecting. So I do apologize for getting that wrong. Again, closer is Evan Phillips. Lineup, we already saw it. Mookie Betts, Ohtani, Freeman, Smith, Muncy, Hernandez, Pages, whatever, Lux. James Outman is gone now, so it's been a little bit more Kike Hernandez, Rojas, Barnes, Chris Taylor. Look, this Dodgers team's good. We just saw them. I do think there was a world where we went 2-2 against them on the road. Gives me a little bit of hope for being at home. Joe, you said you wanted 3 wins this week. I'm going to give you 3 wins. I think the Reds find a way and they win 1 of 2 against the Dodgers at home over the weekend. I think Ellie has a massive game in one of these. He likes playing against the Dodgers apparently, and he really likes to play at home. So I'm going to bank on us finding a way. You said you want 3 wins. Otherwise, the season's over. I'm giving us 3 wins right here. You can let me know if you feel differently, but I feel like they find 1 here because if you're asking for them to find 2 wins against the team, that's why I went 2 wins against the Padres. I don't know if it's going to happen against this Dodgers team. But again, I just generally feel, I know the team necessarily hasn't played great at home overall, but they haven't played great overall anyways. So I just feel like this is maybe the series where they kind of get some stuff figured out before we will talk about the Cardinals for next week. Not on this show, but next week's show. So yeah, that's where I'm at. 3 wins, baby.
All right, so I don't remember who all you asked about. It's Andy Pages.
Pages, that's right.
I'm trying to remember what all he said. I was looking up stuff while you were talking, trying to answer what you were asking. And then Reds went 4-2 against the Dodgers last year. They won 2 in LA. They won 2 in Cincinnati. Okay. We lost on June 8th. I remember I was at that game because Clayton Kershaw was pitching, and the Reds stood no chance against that beautiful left arm of his. All right, so for me, I'm going 1-2 in this series as well. Again, for me, this team has shown they'll have 1 game where they'll hit the ball, and then the other 2 games in the series they will not. There's a possibility, as you said, Rob, they can win 3 games this week. They could win 4. I could see this team being streaky enough to be able to win 4. But at the end of the day, these teams they are playing are a little bit more stacked. They have more depth. They have guys who come out of nowhere, like I said, with the Padres, with Jurickson Profar coming out and producing as well. Again, the bullpen is going to be the issue. Our starters might be able to do well, but if the Dodgers already have the game plan of like, hey, let's get through the starters to get to the bullpen, that's what scares me for the series overall. If they're able to do that in the first game of the series, whether that's Ashcraft or Green, who seem to be the ones who have trouble keeping their pitch counts down, for the Red staff, I mean, that's whoever they want to do that to, that could be a factor for the rest of the series. So I'll say they go 2-4, which technically means season over. But for me, Rob, I know you would not feel similarly, but I just think it's hard to make up that ground. And then it does put a greater importance, no matter what happens in this week, the big importance is on that first series against the Cardinals after this, next Monday, Memorial Day weekend. Memorial Day weekend, we have them coming in. So that would be... that one you have to win that. If we go 3-3 or if you go 2-4, I think you have to win that series to put yourself on the right track to have a good June. So that's what I'm looking for. Everyone should try to go down to the ballpark and see Shohei Ohtani and Mookie Betts and some of these all-time greats that the Dodgers have as well. Even if the Reds lose and you're frustrated about that, you can go tell people for the rest of your life you saw Shohei Ohtani in person.
I agree with that. I will say, what would be really fun? Just really, really fun. They won these 9 games.
Yeah, let's do it.
It's not going to happen. There's literally a 1% chance of that happening, but God, wouldn't that be fun? They get right back in it, man. They win 9 in a row at home, and you're sitting there and you're like, oh man, they back, baby. They are back. I'm using a lot of baby today, but it's just kind of in the mind already. Holy crap. I don't know. We'll see, Joe. We will. I really don't know. I think they have to win 2. It is absolutely over if they don't win at least 2 games this week. That I will say. I think that will be too much for them to overcome. And it may be like, what is a 1-game difference? In the standings, it's kind of a 2-game difference. You know what I mean? Like the change between the loss and the win is basically 2. So you can go do math if you want to on your own. I'm not going to explain that here. But we will have to see. Let's really hope they can figure it out. I honestly felt like they played much better than I thought this week. I really genuinely believe that they could have won 4 games and gone 4-3 this week. They just got to get just a couple more things right and they can get there. So I'm really, really hoping that they win 3, Joe, but we'll have to see. I mean, it would be one of the most disappointing. I cannot believe that we'd be looking at a team that's 10 games under with like a run differential of like 12. That's just crazy to me. It'd probably be a little more than that, maybe like 13, but even that's just really not that bad. Quick reference. Mets are only 4 games under and they have a 13 run differential, so minus 13. So that'd be a huge disappointment, but we'll have to see. But we really do appreciate all of you. Please let us know what you guys are thinking. If you've gotten this far and you're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever you're listening to, please go and subscribe on our YouTube channel so we can keep growing that. Please give us a like. It helps the algorithm quite a bit. And we want to make sure that we keep doing these. So thank you guys so much. Let's hope the Reds can find it in themselves to battle. Let's hope they enjoy this off day. Let's really hope that the Braves absolutely shell the Padres for the next 12 hours or so. And yeah, guys, with that, we'll catch you on the next one.